The Galactic War had festered for centuries, a festering wound across countless star systems. Empires rose and fell, but the core conflict, the brutal stalemate between the V'Rall Imperium and the K'tharr Concordance, remained a constant. Billions of lives had been extinguished, entire worlds laid waste, all for the sake of territorial advantage measured in light years and resources counted in exotic matter. Both sides commanded fleets of unimaginable scale, bristling with planet-shattering weaponry and capable of faster-than-light travel that folded space on command. Yet, for all their might, they were locked in a dance of mutual annihilation, each victory hollow, each defeat a prelude to another bloody engagement. Their conventional FTL, while rapid, allowed predictable incursions, and their weapon systems, while powerful, demanded direct engagement. The result, endless, devastating battles of attrition that chewed through fleets and resources with soul-crushing efficiency. Humanity, a species tucked away on the far fringe of the Perseus Arm, was an afterthought in this grand, horrific drama. Their sol system was marked on galactic charts as a minor isolationist entity, barely worth the ink. V'Rall strategists would occasionally scoff at their primitive warp drive signatures, while K'tharr scholars might offer a passing mention of their peculiar social structures. They were, in essence, galactic nobodies, beneath notice, beneath concern. Gray, a K'tharr military strategist with scales the deep indigo of a storm-racked night, traced the holographic projection of the front lines with a clawed digit. The light from the map cast flickering shadows across his multifaceted eyes, usually narrowed in assessment. He had spent the better part of 2 centuries navigating these brutal conflicts, his posture carrying the weary burden of a lifetime witnessing destruction. His latest assignment felt like another turn of the same grinding wheel, a holding action on the Perithian Veil defending against the latest V'Rall push. A sharp, almost frantic chime cut through the low hum of the Tactical Operations Center, an intercept flagged with the highest urgency. Gray's comms officer, a younger K'tharr with bright, alert emerald scales, snapped to attention. Commander Gray, an unsecured K'tharr transmission, encrypted for primary command channels, just breached our deep scan net. V'Rall origin. Gray's gaze sharpened. Play it. Static crackled, then resolved into the agitated voice of a K'tharr logistics officer, his tone laced with desperation. Coordinates for the rendezvous point are confirmed, but the operational parameters, they're unprecedented. Unconventional physics. The new player has guaranteed results. This is our last gambit, a final, desperate move. If this fails, the Concordance is finished. A pause, heavy with unspoken dread. Then another voice, deeper, more authoritative though still strained. Confirm the new player's designation. Are they truly prepared to intervene? Affirmative, High Command, designation Sol. Their readiness is absolute. They claim they can end this war in a single move. Gray's multifaceted eyes dilated slightly. Sol, humans. The name resonated with a faint, almost forgotten hum in the vast database of galactic species. Unconventional physics? He rumbled, his voice a low, gravelly timbre. He watched the faces of his tactical officers, their expressions shifting from stoic attention to a mixture of confusion and mild derision. Sol, humanity. The idea was absurd. They had no known fleets capable of impacting the war, no strategic assets of note. Yet the K'tharr commander's tone, it wasn't a bluff. It was the desperate pronouncement of a species on the brink. The transmission ended abruptly, the encryption reasserting itself. The tactical officer looked up, flicking his sensory tendrils in a gesture of bewilderment. Sol, humans, what could they possibly do, Commander? Their energy signatures are barely tertiary. We've seen their defense networks, static energy fields around their primary system. Nothing to threaten a single V'Rall dreadnought. Gray leaned back, his posture subtly shifting, a rare sign of intrigue. The V'Rall Imperium, for all its brutal efficiency, was also deeply conservative in its strategic thinking. Any deviation from known parameters, any hint of an unknown variable, could throw their calculations into disarray. Prepare a preliminary threat assessment on the Sol system, he commanded, his voice holding an unusual edge. Prioritize any data on their unconventional physics. Dismissed. His officers saluted, a synchronized movement of scaled forearms, then dispersed, murmuring amongst themselves. Gray remained alone in the flickering light of the holographic map. His sharp intellect, usually focused on immediate battle plans, now grappled with an anomaly. A new player, capable of ending the war, emerging from the most unlikely corner of the galaxy. It sparked only mild intrigue among his peers, but for Gray it was a tiny, persistent shard of ice in the fiery core of perpetual conflict. He had seen too many final gambits fail, too many desperate hopes crushed. Yet the K'tharr desperation was real, palpable. What form could this unconventional physics take? How could a species so insignificant on the galactic stage wield a force capable of such a claim? The question lingered, a quiet hum in the silence of the command center. He considered their known orbital defense grids, vast but seemingly inert, nothing more than relic space junk in the grand scheme of things. Could there be more? His multifaceted eyes fixed on the distant, unassuming dot that represented Sol, a tiny, almost invisible speck on the vast canvas of a war-torn galaxy. The dust of the Prithian Veil engagement had barely settled when new orders reached Gray. They were audacious, bordering on suicidal, and entirely unexpected. Not a holding action, not a renewed offensive, but a diplomatic escort. His indigo scales, normally dulled by the pervasive grit of battle, seemed to bristle with incredulity. The holographic comms display showed the grim, stoic face of High Command K'tharr. Commander Gray, the High Commander's voice was a deep, resonant rumble, devoid of its usual imperiousness. Your strategic acumen and discretion are unparalleled. You are tasked with escorting a Class Gamma diplomatic vessel, the Silent Resolve, to a neutral zone. Your destination? The Sol system. Gray's multifaceted eyes widened almost imperceptibly. Sol system. The faint hum of that intercepted transmission immediately returned. High Commander, with all due respect, Sol system, the humans, what possible strategic importance could they hold in this conflict? His voice, usually so measured, betrayed a hint of genuine bewilderment. They are, Commander, our last hope. A Hail Mary, as their old Earth legends might have put it. We have received assurances of their unique capabilities. They have promised a resolution. Your escort ensures the Silent Resolve arrives unharmed and that the human delegation feels appropriately protected. The High Commander's posture, typically ramrod straight, held a subtle tension, a burden that even his rank could not fully conceal. Gray's gaze flickered to the K'tharr tactical officer standing beside him. Valeri, a xenolinguist of considerable renown, had been assigned to his command staff for this very mission. Her emerald scales shimmered with subtle shifts as she processed the High Commander's words, her facial ridges articulating a profound skepticism. She moved with an elegant, almost fluid grace, yet her posture often held a subtle tension, a readiness to challenge or dissect. Her long, whip-like sensory tendrils twitched, a clear sign of her internal agitation. "Humans," Valeri murmured, her voice clear and resonant, a sharp contrast to Gray's gravelly tone. Their historical records indicate a species prone to internal conflict, barely achieving spaceflight centuries ago, then isolating themselves. What unique capabilities could they possibly possess that two galactic empires have not? Her analytical mind was already dissecting the premise, finding it illogical. Gray understood her skepticism. He shared it. High Commander, are we truly placing our trust in a species with such limited galactic engagement? Their limited engagement is precisely why they may possess the very solution we lack, Commander. Their neutrality has allowed them to pursue different avenues of development, unburdened by the exigencies of this war. They are, shall we say, a blank slate, or perhaps a hidden hand. The High Commander's voice held a note of weary finality. The fate of the Concordance rests on this. Proceed immediately. The transmission cut. Valeri turned to Gray, her emerald scales darkening slightly. A hidden hand capable of ending this war? Commander, their most advanced known FTL is rudimentary. Their weaponry, by all accounts, is conventional plasma and kinetics, perhaps a potent biological weapon? But that would violate every known galactic accord and surely not end the war, but merely transform it. Her sensory tendrils retracted slightly, her discomfort evident. Our orders are clear, Valeri, Gray stated, his voice regaining its usual steady cadence. We escort, we observe, we ensure the Silent Resolve reaches Sol, prepare the fleet for immediate jump. He knew his words held little comfort for her or himself. This mission felt like a desperate gamble, a throwing of dice when the game was already lost. The journey to the Sol system was long, punctuated by the monotonous hum of the FTL drives. As they neared the outer reaches, Gray ordered the Silent Resolve and its escort fleet to drop out of warp. The stars resolved into sharp, distant pinpricks of light. In the foreground, against the dark velvet of space, a sight awaited them that only deepened Valeri's cynicism. "There it is," Gray rumbled, gesturing to the main view screen. "The famous human defense grid." Before them lay a sprawling, irregular network of what appeared to be inert metallic structures. Thousands of them, glittering faintly in the distant starlight, orbiting the pale blue marble of their home world. They varied wildly in size and shape, some appearing as smooth, elongated cylinders, others as intricate, multifaceted constructions. They floated, seemingly aimless, in vast, diffuse formations, like cosmic debris caught in an elaborate orbital current. There was no visible power signature, no weapon emplacements, no discernible energy fields. They were simply there, a testament to an alien species' odd sense of territoriality. Valeri's facial ridges creased. It's precisely as historical records describe, static, non-functional, at least in any offensive capacity, a relic. Their primary defense is their isolation, Commander, not this. It looks like a glorified orbital junk heap. She tapped a clawed finger on the display. If this is their hidden fleet, then the Concordance is truly lost. Her tone was sharp, analytical, laced with unconcealed disdain. She couldn't fathom how such a collection of inert matter could be considered a military asset, let alone a war-ending solution. The idea was almost laughable. She adjusted her posture, a subtle shift that communicated her intellectual dismissal of the entire premise. Gray said nothing, his gaze fixed on the peculiar structures. He knew Valeri was correct by all conventional metrics, yet the K'tharr High Command had been unequivocal. A desperate gamble indeed. A profound unease settled within him. The Silent Resolve navigated the inert human defense grid, its sensors registering no hostile intent from the thousands of silently drifting metallic shapes. Valeri maintained a posture of polite skepticism, her emerald scales shimmering faintly with irritation at the perceived waste of time and resources. Gray, ever observant, noted the meticulous precision with which the human orbital traffic controllers guided them, bypassing vast swaths of the seemingly aimless debris. It hinted at an underlying order, a controlled chaos, that piqued his strategic curiosity despite the overwhelming impression of obsolescence. Their destination was an unassuming orbital station, stark and functional, lacking the ornate grandeur of K'tharr installations or the imposing militaristic aesthetic of V'Rall fortresses. Its exterior was a patchwork of matte gray and dark blue panels, blending almost seamlessly with the void. Inside, however, a sense of quiet efficiency prevailed. The air was cool, faintly metallic, and the lighting subdued. The K'tharr delegation, including Gray and Valeri, disembarked onto a spacious, circular chamber. The human representatives awaiting them were surprisingly understated. Dressed in simple, functional attire, their forms were unarmored, lacking any visible enhancements. They possessed a curious bilateral symmetry, a softer musculature than the K'tharr, and their skin tones varied from pale to deep brown, their hair from dark to light. Their movements were calm and deliberate, a stark contrast to the K'tharr delegation's barely contained apprehension. They were characterized by their clear, steady gazes and their ability to remain unperturbed under immense pressure. One human, a male with a composed expression and steady eyes, stepped forward. "Welcome, K'tharr delegation. I am Administrator Eric. We appreciate you making this journey. Please follow me." His voice was modulated, calm, and spoke Galactic Common with impeccable fluency, a detail that surprised Valeri. The meeting took place in a minimalist conference room, dominated by a large circular holotable. The humans offered nutrient paste and hydration, which the K'tharr politely declined, their discomfort evident. The initial exchange was tense, filled with alien skepticism. "Administrator Eric," Valeri began, her voice carefully modulated, yet a subtle shift in her posture indicated her analytical stance. "We are here at the behest of High Command. Your people have made a bold claim that you possess the means to end this protracted conflict. Given humanity's historical posture of isolation and what appears to be a limited understanding of galactic-scale warfare, we confess to a profound sense of bewilderment. What precisely is your proposal?" Her sensory tendrils remained still, poised for analysis. Eric inclined his head slightly. "We understand your skepticism, Commander Valeri. Humanity has indeed chosen a path of non-intervention for many centuries. However, observing the escalating devastation, we felt compelled to offer a solution. Our proposal centers not on conventional warfare, but on fundamental physics. We believe true peace can only be achieved by removing the capacity for widespread destruction." "Removing the capacity?" Gray rumbled, his voice low, his multifaceted eyes fixed on Eric. "Do you suggest a galaxy-wide disarmament? That is a pipe dream, Administrator. Both the Vel and the K'tharr have fought too long, sacrificed too much to simply lay down their arms." Eric offered a small, knowing smile that did not quite reach his eyes. "Not disarmament, Commander. Disarming. A subtle but crucial distinction. We are not asking anyone to give up their defenses. We are offering to make offense impossible." He gestured to the holotable. "Perhaps a demonstration will clarify." A human technician, a female with an equally composed demeanor, initiated a sequence on the holotable. The surface shimmered, resolving into a sophisticated holographic projection of a galactic conflict. It was a skirmish between two hypothetical fleets, rendered in astonishing detail. Gray instinctively analyzed the tactical formations, the energy signatures, the trajectories of the simulated projectiles. Then the human technician activated another device. A ripple of unseen energy seemed to emanate from it. On the holotable, as the two simulated fleets were about to engage, something extraordinary happened. The trajectories of the simulated projectiles abruptly veered off course, harmlessly dissipating into the void. The FTL signatures of the simulated warships flickered, then extinguished, leaving the vessels stranded, inert. There were no explosions, no destructive beams, no physical impacts, just a sudden, complete cessation of offensive capability. Valeri gasped a sharp, involuntary intake of air. Her emerald scales flashed, and her sensory tendrils shot out, twitching wildly as if trying to grasp at the unseen phenomenon. What was that?" she demanded, her voice losing its measured tone, betraying genuine astonishment. "It defies every known law of applied physics. How did you disrupt their FTL without engaging their drives? How did you deflect their weaponry without a counterforce?" Eric's composed expression remained. "We call it localized gravitational lensing, Commander, and targeted kinetic energy absorption. By precisely manipulating space-time around an object, we can render its propulsion systems inert and dissipate the kinetic force of any projectile before it can achieve impact. It's not a weapon in the traditional sense, it's a field, a precise, non-lethal disarming technique." Gray stared, his mind reeling. His decades of strategic experience, his ingrained understanding of combat, were being overturned in a single silent moment. No, not overturned, ignored, rendered obsolete. He observed Valeri beside him, her physical reactions mirroring his own internal turmoil. Her posture, usually so poised, was now subtly hunched, her gaze fixed on the holotable with an almost frantic intensity. Her facial ridges, typically smooth, were now deeply furrowed. The K'tharr delegation, a tableau of stunned disbelief, shifted uncomfortably in their seats. They were seeing something that defied their understanding, a concept so alien to their millennia of warfare that it seemed almost like magic. Yet it was demonstrably, frighteningly real. Still, the scale was minuscule. A simulation of two small fleets was one thing. A galaxy-wide war was another. The skepticism, though shaken, lingered. The silence in the human orbital station was profound, broken only by the ragged breathing of the K'tharr delegation. The V'Rall fleet, moments ago a terrifying display of military might, now hung in space like a collection of derelict husks, their internal lights still flickering, but their propulsion, weapons, and FTL systems utterly inert. Not a single ship had been scratched, no lives lost, yet their immense power had been reduced to nothing. Gray, still gripping his holstered sidearm, felt a tremor run through his powerful frame. Valeri stood beside him, her emerald scales almost phosphorescent with shock, her sensory tendrils fully retracted against her head in a primal gesture of disbelief. Administrator Eric, standing before the main viewport, turned back to them, his expression still calm, though a hint of weariness now softened his features. "As you can see," he said, his voice even, "the system works." System! Gray finally managed to articulate, his voice a guttural rasp. That was an entire fleet. Thousands of vessels. You disabled them without a single energy discharge. His multifaceted eyes darted between Eric and the paralyzed V'Rall armada. It is a distributed network, Eric clarified patiently, of advanced gravitational kinetic manipulators. Each unit works in concert, adapting its field emissions to the specific energy signatures of the target. We don't destroy their systems, we simply render them incapable of offensive or transgravitational action. Their internal life support, communications, and basic navigation remain operational. They are merely inert. Valeri's voice was a whisper, filled with a dawning horror and awe. It's a galactic-scale stun field. But how? The energy requirements, the computational power, it should be impossible. Her analytical mind, once so certain of its parameters, was now grappling with a reality that shattered every known scientific and military doctrine. She moved closer to the viewport, her hand pressed against the transparasteel as if trying to physically comprehend the impossible spectacle. Eric nodded. It required significant investment, Commander Valeri, and many centuries of development, undisturbed by the conflicts that have consumed the wider galaxy. We focused on fundamental physics, on understanding the very fabric of spacetime rather than simply harnessing it for destructive force. Our fleet is designed for disarming, not destruction. It's a peace enforcement network. He then opened a comms channel. This is Administrator Eric of Sol to the V'Rall Imperium fleet, currently stationary in the neutral zone. Your vessels are disabled. You are unharmed. This is not an act of war, but an intervention. You have two options. One, you may stand down, cease all hostilities, and send a diplomatic envoy to the Sol system to begin mediated peace talks. Your fleet will remain inert until negotiations are concluded or until a binding galactic peace treaty is signed. Two, you may refuse, in which case your fleet will remain inert indefinitely. Your life support will function, your internal communications will remain, but you will drift unable to move, unable to fight, until your resources are depleted. The choice is yours. A ripple of low, agitated murmurs spread through the K'tharr delegation. An ultimatum, delivered by a species previously deemed inconsequential to the most formidable military power in the galaxy. Gray felt a strange surge of something. Not triumph, but a profound, almost dizzying sense of paradigm shift. This wasn't about winning a battle, it was about ending the war by making battle obsolete. A long silence stretched, punctuated only by the distant hum of the station. Then a V'Rall voice, guttural and filled with a raw, humiliated fury, crackled over the comms. You dare! This is an act of aggression, a violation of galactic sovereignty." "It is an act of peace," Eric replied, his voice unwavering. "An act to preserve galactic civilization from its own self-destructive impulses. Your capacity for aggression has been removed. Your capacity for diplomacy remains. The choice is yours, Commander." Another tense silence. The K'tharr delegation held their collective breath. Gray watched the V'Rall fleet, waiting for any sign of defiance, but there was none. Their anger was impotent, their immense power, their technological superiority, their strategic cunning, all rendered meaningless by a force they could not comprehend, a force that simply stopped them. Finally, the V'Rall commander's voice, now laced with a chilling, defeated resignation, came through. We accept. Send us the coordinates for the diplomatic envoy. We will comply." A collective gasp of astonishment escaped the K'tharr delegation. Valeri's jaw hung slightly open. Gray, for the first time in centuries, felt a faint, unfamiliar stir of hope. He looked at Eric, the human, so deceptively mild in his demeanor, who had just disarmed an entire armada and forced a surrender without a single casualty. This was not merely ingenuity. It was a level of strategic brilliance and a profound commitment to non-lethal solutions that had never been seen on the galactic stage. Humanity wasn't just joining the war, they were ending it, not by fighting, but by rendering conflict itself inert. News of the V'Rall fleet's instant neutralization ripped across the galaxy like a sudden violent tear in the fabric of accepted reality. Holofeeds across 1,000 systems flickered with images of the inert V'Rall armada juxtaposed against the unassuming orbital station of Sol. The message was clear, delivered not through proclamations, but through irrefutable action. Humanity possessed a power unlike any other. The initial reaction was a whirlwind of emotions. Among the K'tharr Concordance, the prevailing sentiment quickly shifted from desperate hope to jubilant relief, then to bewildered awe. High Command, initially skeptical, now hailed humanity as saviors. Declarations of gratitude poured into the Sol system, requests for alliances, for technological sharing, for guidance. They had fought for generations against an immovable object only to see it rendered motionless by an invisible hand. Other species reacted with a complex mixture of awe, fear, and suspicion. Minor empires, long crushed under the boots of the V'Rall, or caught in the destructive wake of the conflict, saw a glimmer of true galactic peace. Larger, more established powers, wary of any new unseen force, dispatched cautious diplomatic missions, their sensors probing the Sol system for any hint of vulnerability, for any chink in humanity's seemingly impenetrable technological armor. Gray and Valeri, having witnessed the impossible firsthand, found themselves thrust into the unprecedented role of key liaisons between the K'tharr Concordance and humanity. Valeri, still grappling with the profound implications of the gravitational kinetic manipulators, was now poring over every byte of data the humans cautiously shared, her emerald scales often shimmering with an almost feverish intensity. Her analytical mind, once locked into conventional parameters, was now attempting to construct entirely new frameworks of understanding. "The computational load alone," she murmured one cycle, gesturing at a holographic schematic of a single drone unit. "To precisely calculate and emit gravitational lensing fields across thousands of targets simultaneously, each with unique energy signatures, it defies our most advanced supercomputing capabilities. And they claim these units self-replicate? That implies an exponential growth capacity, an intelligence at work that we can barely conceive." Her long, whip-like sensory tendrils twitched, a nervous habit she had developed since the incident. Gray watched her, a faint, almost imperceptible shift in his posture showing a shared sense of wonder. His own strategic understanding of warfare had been utterly shattered, then rebuilt in a single, bewildering moment. "They spoke of centuries of development, Valeri, undisturbed, unburdened by the need for conventional arms races. Perhaps that isolation was their greatest strength, allowing them to pursue entirely different branches of physics unconstrained by our millennia of destructive innovation." His voice was thoughtful, no longer tinged with skepticism, but with a profound respect. The humans, through Administrator Eric, acted swiftly and decisively. They did not gloat, nor did they demand tribute or territory. Their singular focus remained on peace. They announced their intention to extend the peace enforcement network across the primary war zones, offering to disable any and all active combat fleets, regardless of allegiance, if they refused to participate in mediated peace talks. "This is an offer," Eric stated in a galaxy-wide broadcast, his calm, composed face projected onto millions of screens. "Not a threat. We seek only to end the suffering, to provide the necessary pause for diplomacy to take root. Those who choose continued aggression will find their capacity for it removed. Those who choose peace will find our assistance unwavering." The effect was immediate and profound. Flashpoints across the galaxy, which had been sites of endless, bloody skirmishes, suddenly fell silent. A V'Rall assault on the Xylos Nebula was preempted when their entire attack fleet was simply rendered inert, floating harmlessly through the cosmic dust. A K'tharr counteroffensive on the disputed moon of Rix III was similarly halted, their ships losing all propulsion mid-trajectory. In each instance, the hidden fleet acted with surgical precision, disabling only the combat vessels, leaving civilian craft and infrastructure untouched. Valeri tracked the reported incidents with a growing sense of astonishment. "They are everywhere," she breathed, watching the galactic map light up with new zones of disengagement. Or rather, their network is. It adapts. It learns. It isn't just reacting, it's anticipating. "Commander, this is not a fleet of ships. It's a sentient blanket of pacification." Her facial ridges softened slightly, a hint of grudging admiration replacing her earlier skepticism. The strategic landscape was irrevocably altered. Both the V'Rall Imperium and the K'tharr Concordance, suddenly facing the prospect of having their entire fighting forces rendered useless, were forced to reconsider their positions. The centuries-old stalemate, once seemingly insurmountable, had been broken not by a superior weapon, but by the complete absence of one. Humanity, once perceived as weak, had demonstrated a strength so utterly alien in its nature that it forced the galaxy to stop, listen, and for the first time in a very long time, genuinely contemplate peace. Gray, observing the unfolding events, felt a quiet, profound certainty settle within him. This was indeed a single move, but one that would resonate through galactic history for millennia. The Grand Assembly for Peace Negotiations was convened on a neutral station, a vast orbital city transformed from a bustling trade hub into a silent forum for galactic destiny. Representatives from the V'Rall Imperium, their chitinous armor gleaming under the station's soft lights, sat rigidly opposite the K'tharr Concordance delegates, whose scaled forms shifted restlessly. Other species, from the multi-limbed Zeal to the ethereal Lumina, occupied the observation tiers, their curiosity and trepidation palpable. Human representatives, led by Administrator Arik, occupied the central dais. They were few, unassuming, and maintained a serene composure that baffled the agitated aliens. Gray and Valeri, now formally assigned as K'tharr liaisons, sat among their delegation, observing with a mixture of hope and deep analytical curiosity. Valeri, in particular, found herself consumed by the philosophical implications of humanity's actions. Her emerald scales reflected the ambient light, and her sensory tendrils occasionally brushed against the edge of the holotable, as if seeking tactile confirmation of this new reality. The initial days of negotiation were predictably fraught. Accusations flew, ancient grievances were rehashed, and the deep-seated animosities of centuries threatened to derail any progress. It was during a particularly heated exchange, when a V'Rall commander sneered about humanity's supposed cowardice in not engaging in honorable combat, that Arik finally spoke. Commander, Arik's voice was calm, yet it cut through the din of arguments. We did not intervene to engage in combat. We intervened to prevent it. Our philosophy is rooted in a fundamental understanding that true progress cannot occur while civilizations are consumed by self-destructive conflict. We chose a different path, one of non-aggression, not from weakness, but from a profound conviction in the value of every sentient life and the potential for a shared, prosperous future. A K'tharr diplomat, his voice a guttural growl, interjected, "But why? Why this immense effort? Why build such a network, only to prevent fighting? What is your gain? Territory, resources, political influence?" He leaned forward, his posture demanding an answer to the universal question of motivation. Arik's clear, steady gaze swept across the assembly. Our gain is the galaxy's stability. Our gain is the preservation of knowledge, the flourishing of cultures, the advancement of science. For centuries, while your empires exhausted yourselves in battle, humanity channeled its collective ingenuity into understanding the universe at its most fundamental levels. We developed the gravitational kinetic network not as a weapon, but as a failsafe, a last resort, a guarantee against existential conflict. He paused, allowing his words to sink in. We foresaw that endless war would inevitably lead to mutual annihilation or stagnation. We chose to ensure that future would not come to pass. Valeri's head tilted slightly, her facial ridges softening. Her analytical mind, so accustomed to dissecting motivations based on power and resource acquisition, was struggling with this concept. A civilization investing immense resources not for conquest but for universal preservation? It was an alien concept. You built this fleet as a preventative measure?" she asked, her voice softer than usual. "A deterrent against yourselves as much as others?" Arik nodded. "Against the destructive potential inherent in any sufficiently advanced civilization. We learned from our own history. We realized that true strength lay not in the ability to destroy, but in the capacity to uplift and protect. This network represents that commitment." Gray, observing Valeri, noticed the profound shift in her perspective. Her initial cynicism had begun to erode with the first display of the fleet's power. Now, confronted with the core human philosophy, her posture was less tense, her sensory tendrils uncurled, almost relaxed. She was not just analyzing data now, she was grappling with a new worldview. Her gaze, usually sharp with skepticism, was now wide with dawning comprehension. "So your strength," Valeri said, her voice filled with dawning revelation, "lies not in brute force, but in foresight. in a dedication to peace so absolute that you were willing to create the means to enforce it, even if it meant remaining unknown, isolated, until the ultimate moment of necessity. Eric met her gaze. Precisely, Commander Valeri. We believe that if peace was to ever truly take root, the option for total war had to be removed. Our network simply removes that option. It is a testament to our foresight and commitment to universal peace. The atmosphere in the assembly shifted. The initial anger and suspicion began to give way to bewildered contemplation. The V'Rall, stripped of their capacity for aggression, could only listen. The K'tharr, their relief turning to deep introspection, considered the centuries of their own conflict, the futility of their battles, and the stark contrast presented by this unexpected, unassuming species. Humanity had demonstrated not just technological superiority, but a moral and philosophical superiority that truly bewildered and impressed the assembled aliens. Their ingenuity wasn't just in their machines, but in the very core of their purpose. A profound, unsettling realization settled over the assembly. Humanity was not just a new player, they were a new kind of player. Despite the overwhelming evidence and the profound philosophical revelations at the peace assembly, pockets of resistance flickered across the galaxy. Centuries of ingrained aggression and the intoxicating allure of power were not easily dismissed. A significant V'Rall faction, led by a zealous, heavily armored commander, refused to accept the new reality. They viewed humanity's intervention as a humiliating trick, a temporary impediment, or a weakness to be exploited. His armor, more ornate and sharpened than that of his diplomatic counterparts, hinted at his unyielding defiance. These humans, the rogue V'Rall commander snarled during a clandestine holoconference with his loyalists, his guttural voice laced with fury, they claim peace, but they disarm us. This is not peace, it is subjugation. Their fleet cannot be everywhere. It has limits. We will prove it. His plan was audacious, desperate, and utterly predictable to Gray's seasoned strategic mind. They would target a critical K'tharr supply convoy, inbound from the resource-rich Outer Rim, hoping to draw the hidden fleet into an engagement where its limitations could be exposed. A coordinated attack, hitting multiple points simultaneously, designed to overwhelm the human network's processing capacity or reveal a blind spot. Gray received intelligence of the impending attack from a deep-cover K'tharr operative. His indigo scales seemed to ripple with a familiar tension, a return to the days of immediate crisis. He immediately sought out Valeri, who was still absorbed in analyzing holographic simulations of the human gravitational kinetic units. Rogue V'Rall elements, Gray stated, his voice low and urgent. Coordinate attack on Convoy K7, Sector Gamma 9. Estimated arrival in 0.5 cycles. They believe they can bypass the human network. Valeri's sensory tendrils instantly coiled, a rapid response to the sudden urgency. Her emerald scales dulled slightly, her analytical focus shifting from theory to immediate threat. They still don't comprehend, she murmured, more to herself than to Gray. They think it's a conventional defense, something that can be saturated or flanked. She pushed herself away from the holotable. We must inform Administrator Eric immediately. They transmitted the intelligence to the human representatives on the neutral station. Eric's composed expression remained, though a flicker of disappointment crossed his features. Unfortunate, he acknowledged, but not unexpected. Humanity understands the inertia of old patterns. He did not appear worried. We will respond. The K'tharr convoy, consisting of heavily laden freighters and a small conventional escort, entered Sector Gamma 9, unaware of the impending ambush. Suddenly from the void, the rogue V'Rall fleet materialized. Hundreds of warships, moving with brutal efficiency, fanning out to enclose the convoy. Their weapon emplacements glowed with charging energy. On the neutral station, Gray watched the unfolding events on the main tactical display, a grim knot forming in his gut. Valeri stood beside him, her posture tense, her body subtly leaning forward, her eyes fixed on the display with an intensity that betrayed her internal anxiety. The V'Rall fired. Streams of plasma and kinetic projectiles hurtled towards the K'tharr convoy. It was a devastating opening volley, designed to shatter their defenses before the human network could react. But the reaction was instantaneous. Even before the V'Rall projectiles reached their targets, the silent, omnipresent wave emanated from the void. The seemingly empty space around the K'tharr convoy shimmered, almost imperceptibly. The incoming plasma bolts dissipated into harmless energy flares, their kinetic force absorbed. The physical projectiles simply ceased to move, hanging suspended in space, then slowly drifting away, robbed of their momentum. Simultaneously, the rogue V'Rall fleet, in the very act of firing, suffered the same fate as their counterparts near Sol. Their FTL drives powered down, their weapon systems went inert, and their propulsion units sputtered into silence. Not a single ship was damaged, not a single life lost. But every single offensive system, every means of attack, was rendered useless. Then something new occurred. The human fleet, the distributed network, didn't just disable them. With a subtle manipulation of the local gravitational fields, the inert V'Rall vessels were gently yet inexorably shunted. They were guided, as if by an unseen hand, into a tightly packed dormant cluster, their forms bumping harmlessly against each other, a sprawling, helpless mass in the depths of space. It was an act of control, of mastery, that went beyond simple disarmament. It was a precise, targeted, and utterly humbling demonstration. Valerie gasped, her hand flying to her mouth, her eyes wide. Her facial ridges were smooth now, all skepticism eradicated, replaced by a profound, almost reverent wonder. "They corralled them," she whispered, her voice filled with awe. "They didn't just stop them, they moved them, like toy ships. It's truly omnipresent. There are no blind spots. There is no way to resist." Her earlier belief that there must be limits or weaknesses to the human technology shattered completely. This was a force that operated on a scale and with a precision that was simply beyond the comprehension of any other known galactic power. Gray simply nodded, a slow, deliberate movement. His earlier tension had dissipated, replaced by a quiet, profound certainty. This demonstration solidified everything. The human network was not merely reactive. It was adaptable, intelligent, and capable of a range of physics manipulations far beyond initial understanding. It had proven its omnipresent capability to prevent conflict, not through destruction, but through absolute control. The rogue V'Rall, by attempting to defy humanity, had only succeeded in amplifying their message. The war was truly over. The final act of the Galactic War was not a thunderous battle, but the quiet click of a holographic pen. With all major combatants either disarmed or rendered irrevocably inactive by humanity's ubiquitous network, the rationale for continued conflict dissolved. The rogue V'Rall faction, now drifting in a helpless cluster, served as a stark living monument to the futility of aggression against such an unseen force. Their very immobility screamed the new reality across the stars. The peace accords were signed on the neutral station, a monumental moment witnessed by representatives from across the galaxy. Administrator Eric, his calm demeanor unwavering, presided over the proceedings with quiet authority. Gray and Valerie stood side by side with the K'tharr High Command, their forms exuding a new sense of purpose. Valerie's emerald scales shimmered with a serene light, her analytical mind now fully embracing the profound shift in galactic dynamics. Her sensory tendrils, once indicators of agitation, now rested peacefully, occasionally extending as she processed the historical weight of the moment. The accords were unprecedented in their scope. They mandated an immediate galaxy-wide cessation of hostilities, a dismantling of all weaponized FTL drives, and a redirection of military resources towards infrastructure, research, and interspecies cooperation. Crucially, they formally recognized humanity's peace enforcement network, now universally referred to as the Soul Guardians, as the ultimate arbiter and guarantor of galactic stability. The Soul Guardians, Eric announced during the signing ceremony, his voice resonating through the vast assembly hall, will maintain a low-level, omnipresent presence throughout the galaxy. They are not an occupation force, nor are they a punitive one. They are simply a deterrent, a constant reminder that the capacity for widespread destruction has been removed. Any attempt to rearm or engage in offensive action will be met with immediate, non-lethal disengagement. Our objective remains peace, and we will ensure it endures. The V'Rall delegation, humbled but unscarred, sat in stony silence. Their leader, a formidable V'Rall commander who had once scorned humanity, now listened with a strange mix of respect and deep existential bewilderment. Their military might, once the bedrock of their empire, was now utterly meaningless. The K'tharr, while relieved, grappled with the implications of peace enforced by an outside power, but the alternative, continued bloody attrition, was far worse. Valeri leaned slightly towards Gray, her voice a low murmur. Think of it, Commander. Centuries of war ended in a single decree, and the decree is enforced not by battle, but by an unseen force that makes battle irrelevant. Her facial ridges softened, a look of profound wonder in her eyes. Their ingenuity, their foresight, it's breathtaking. They didn't just win a war, they transcended the very concept of warfare. Gray nodded, his indigo scales reflecting the ambient light of the hall. His posture, once weary from conflict, now held a subtle sense of upright purpose. A peace forged not from exhaustion, but from an inability to fight. It's a fundamental change to galactic civilization. We are entering a new era, Valeri. One where strategic thinking shifts from dominance to cooperation, from destruction to creation. With the signing completed, the galaxy began to breathe. Star lanes, once fraught with danger, became arteries of trade and cultural exchange. Resources previously diverted to war machines were now channeled into ambitious infrastructure projects, terraforming initiatives, and collaborative scientific endeavors. The sole guardians, rarely seen but always felt, became a silent guardian ensuring the peace endured. Planets that had known only war for generations began to heal, their scars slowly fading under the light of a new dawn. Humanity, once a forgotten species on the galactic periphery, was now a crucial, respected power. Their status had not been earned through conquest, but through a singular, unparalleled demonstration of their unique capabilities. Their profound understanding of fundamental physics, their unwavering commitment to non-lethal solutions, and their audacity to conceive of a galaxy without war. They had redefined the very notion of galactic influence, proving that true power lay not in the ability to destroy, but in the capacity to prevent destruction itself. The peace accords were not merely a treaty. They were the genesis of an unprecedented era of galactic cooperation and stability, driven by humanity's unique approach to conflict resolution. The old ways of power dynamics had been swept away, not by force, but by an elegant, ingenious solution that left no room for argument. Gray felt a quiet satisfaction he hadn't known in centuries. The galaxy was not just safe. It was changing, adapting, evolving into something better, something truly new. And humanity, the unassuming species from Sol, was at its quiet, brilliant heart. Years later, the galaxy thrived under the new peace. The scars of the centuries-long conflict were still visible on some ravaged worlds, but new life, new growth, and new endeavors were rapidly obscuring them. The echoes of war had faded, replaced by the harmonious hum of interspecies cooperation. Trade flourished, scientific collaborations spanned light years, and cultural exchanges, once unimaginable, became commonplace. The Sol Guardians, humanity's ubiquitous network, were rarely seen, but their presence was always felt, a reassuring hum beneath the surface of galactic life. Gray, now a revered diplomat and a key figure in the nascent Galactic Council, stood on an observation platform overlooking a thriving multi-species orbital hub. His indigo scales gleamed, no longer dulled by the dust of battle, but reflecting the vibrant, diverse life teeming around him. His posture was straighter, lighter, the weary burden of war finally lifted. Beside him stood Valeri, an influential xenotheorist whose groundbreaking work on humanity's unique philosophical and technological trajectory had reshaped galactic academia. Her emerald scales shone with a healthy sheen, and her sensory tendrils, no longer twitching with agitation, often gestured gracefully as she explained complex concepts to eager students of various species. "It's still astounding, isn't it, Commander?" Valeri mused, her voice soft, filled with wonder. "To think that all those millennia of conflict, that endless cycle of destruction, could be broken so completely, so cleanly." She gestured towards the vibrant traffic of civilian vessels traversing the star lanes, none of them carrying a single weapon. They didn't conquer, they didn't dominate, they simply removed the option for war. Gray's multifaceted eyes swept across the panoramic view. "They gave us the choice we were incapable of making ourselves, Valeri. They showed us that true strength lies not in the ability to inflict suffering, but in the capacity to create a future free from it." He paused, a faint, almost imperceptible smile touching his facial ridges. and they did it all while remaining largely unseen, unheard, until the very last moment. The Soul Guardians had become an integral, yet almost invisible part of galactic existence. Their presence wasn't oppressive, it was protective. If tensions flared between two species, a subtle disengagement of their transit methods might occur, a gentle nudge back towards diplomacy. If a rogue element attempted to weaponize a new technology, the network would instantly render it inert, an elegant, silent rebuke. The constant monitoring, the subtle guiding, ensured that the peace endured without the need for military enforcement. Their isolation wasn't a retreat, as we once thought, Valerie continued, her analytical mind still dissecting the profound implications. It was a crucible. They forged a civilization and a technology that was entirely antithetical to our galactic norms, a species that solved problems through fundamental physics and engineering rather than brute force. They built a failsafe for the galaxy, not for themselves alone. A testament to their foresight, Gray agreed, and their unwavering commitment to a better future for all. He remembered the unassuming nature of Administrator Eric, the quiet confidence of the human technicians. No grand pronouncements, no displays of arrogance, just a steadfast adherence to their unique purpose. The final scene lingered on the vast, silent expanse of space. Far beyond the bustling orbital hubs and the well-traveled star lanes, the distributed human network hummed. Millions of adaptive units, replicating, monitoring, and analyzing, their sleek forms blending seamlessly with the cosmic dust and distant starlight. They were the unseen watchers, the silent guardians. They were always prepared, always monitoring. Their intelligence was vast, their purpose singular. They ensured that the delicate balance of peace, so painstakingly achieved, would endure. Humanity had not just ended a war, they had ushered in an era of unprecedented cooperation, a galactic renaissance built on their unique blend of ingenuity, resilience, and a profound, almost alien, commitment to a future free from the shadow of conflict. The single move had echoed through time, a silent revolution that redefined the very nature of galactic civilization. And as long as the stars shone, the Soul Guardians would continue their silent vigil, a testament to the extraordinary species that chose peace over power and ingenuity over destruction.